Hello, good morning. I believe everyone is connected and ready. Yes, perfect. So we're starting this webinar at 10 a.m. sharp here in São Paulo, Brazil. Good morning to everyone who's joining us for this session. Welcome to this webinar organized by Britcham, the British Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Brazil. My name is Ana Paula Vitelli. I am the president here in Brazil. And I'd like to take this first few minutes to introduce the Chamber, as well as thanks to those who have been involved with this initiative. Our Chamber's mission is to be the focal point for the UK-Brazil business community, providing relevant forums to foster bilateral trade, investment, services, and working. We have a national presence in Brazil with branches in São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Minas Gerais, and Paraná. Can I please ask to everyone to mute your microphones, please? Because there's a bit of background noise. I'm sorry. Yeah, those who are not muted. Thank you. Thank you. So we have a presence in Brazil, being in São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Minas Gerais, and Paraná. We work closely with the UK government in Brazil, operating through a series of industry committees covering key industries in the country, as well as areas of expertise across industries. For further information on our committees, please check our website, britcham.com.br. And now it is time to thank to those who have been involved in this initiative. So firstly, to the Chamber supporting members, which had their names and brands showing our screens just before we started this session. Then our thanks goes to Adam Patterson, the Honorary British Consul in Paraná and Associate Director of the Chamber at our Paraná branch, who along with Gustavo Pires, the Director of the Chamber then in Paraná, have organized this event. Also thanks to Renata Sucupira, President of the International Trade and Investment Committee at the Chamber, who will be acting as the moderator for this discussion. And then our guest this morning, first Vera Innes. Thank you for being with us, Vera. Vera is chair at the Brazilian Chamber in the UK. Thank you, Vera, for supporting this webinar and for joining us today. It is a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you.
Martin Whalley, head of the Department of International Trade at the British Consulate in São Paulo. Thank you for being here with your views on such an important topic for the relations between Brazil and the UK. And then last but not least, Gareth Moore, our keynote speaker this morning for this session. Gareth is head of international corridors at Santander Bank in the UK. Thank you very much for your time and your availability for being with us this morning. Before I pass this on to Gustavo, who will be then leading the conversation with you, I'd like to wish everyone a very good session this morning. I will be turning off my camera, but I'm here watching this whole conversation and discussion. And thank you very much for everyone who have been involved, and as well to our supporting team at the Chamber, led by Fabrício Soares, who's operating everything here on the backstage to make sure we're ready to go and make it happen. So thank you for everyone. Wish you all a great discussion. And
good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Ana, for the introduction. It is a great pleasure to be in contact with our viewers and especially the members of Brazil. First of all, to thank Adam, my good friend, for the initiative to make this event, as well Vera Innes, at the beginning supported with this initiative. Also, thank our the topic of this event. We've been talking about Brexit for quite a while. The committee has been have been very active here in Paraná, and the number of members of Britcham Paraná has been increasing even through the pandemic. So we are very excited, looking forward to see the importance that Britcham Paraná will have in Britcham Brazil as a whole, and fomenting the bilateral trade between Brazil and the UK. I'd like to thank Fabrício Soares and his talented team to helping us putting this event together. And again, all our members in Britcham, in Brazil as a whole, for supporting the entity and making this type of initiatives
Bom dia and good afternoon to colleagues taking part and watching in the UK. Welcome everyone and thanks for tuning in. We have some excellent speakers and content in today's webinar, so I'll be very brief here in my introduction. First things first, just carrying on the thanks. I would like to thank Ana Paula, National Britcham Director. Thank you, of course, to Fabrício, National Britcham Manager, for all the help and support in putting together this event behind the scenes. As always, it's great to work alongside you guys. Many thanks as well to the three speakers for taking the time out to chat with us today. It's a huge pleasure and honor to help organize and curate today's webinar. I suppose the background of which was my visit to the Brazilian Chamber in London last year to chat around potential synergies, collaboration endeavors, including joint events. Now, that would have not been that easy to do, at least in the previous way of doing things. Of course, we know that the current scenario brings significant challenges, but it also brings opportunities. The beauty of the virtual and these virtual events is the partnerships it unlocks and the greater connectivity it brings. In other words, just because we've been practicing social distancing does not mean we need to be distant from each other and from the key conversations taking place in the marketplace and in business. The theme of today's talk, promoted by Britcham, is UK-Brazil opportunities. Great way of thinking about it. The future. Brexit, as Gustavo flagged up, has obviously been knocked off the front page. I see two major certainties looking through this bilateral lens going forward, and it's not death and taxes. It's that current challenges will pass. Every day is one day less to the end of the crisis, and thoughts have already and inevitably, right, started to turn to the economic recovery and what comes next. Without doubt, we're going to get through the other side much more collaboratively than chats and online webinars like this one. And secondly, the Brazil-UK trade and investment relationship will continue to grow. As I often say, when Britcham was founded over 100 years ago, the UK was Brazil's largest trade partner. And although that shows the macro direction of where we would like to get back to, of course, we should not underestimate by any means current bilateral economic numbers. Just some highlights on trade. Total bilateral trade between both countries was worth over £6 billion last year, which is around 40 billion reais, and Britcham 15 or so years. Imports and exports on both sides have grown over 100% over the same period. And last year, British exports have grown by 40%. These big numbers, and these are big positive. Trade in just industrial goods has averaged about $350 million since 2000. Acquisitions of medium-sized companies in the state. As you know, some of the largest British companies are active in Brazil. Quick intro. Vera is a Brazilian lawyer working in the UK. She received her law degree from the University of Sao Paulo and has been practicing law since 1983. She's been advising British companies with interest in Brazil from London since the 1990s, and her areas of expertise are Brazilian corporate law and international private law. For the last 10 years, she's been especially involved with energy companies doing business in Brazil. She's qualified in 3 jurisdictions, Brazil, Portugal, and England and Wales, and became chair of the Brazilian Chamber in February 2020. Vera, I will switch off my microphone here and hand over to you. Thank you very much. A palavra é tua.
Thank you very much, Adam. And I just switched on my microphone to say hello, good morning to our friends in Brazil, and good afternoon to those in the UK who are with us. It is a great pleasure for us from the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce in Great Britain to participate for the first time ever of a seminar, a webinar, of course, with Britcham. And this makes a lot of sense because our aims, our objectives are the same, which is the promotion of trade and businesses between Brazil and the United Kingdom. So it's only natural that we are finally here and long overdue. And I wish to thank you all of you that have organized this opportunity. I would like to thank you, Adam, especially you, Ana, and all of you that have enabled this opportunity to happen today. So I would like to start by giving you a brief idea of who we are at the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce and what we do. We were created in 1942, so quite a long time ago. And throughout the years, we have been promoting events, seminars, talks, always with the purpose of raising Brazil's profile in the UK and fostering the commercial relations between the two countries. So our ultimate aim is to promote the UK-Brazil relations and to assist and to create opportunities for our members to meet, which hopefully will help their businesses. And I should also add that once a year we have our top event in London, is the Personality of the Year and Gala Dinner Award, in which we recognize the achievement of 2 business leaders who have contributed significantly to the commercial relations between UK and Brazil. Unfortunately, we will not be having our traditional dinner this year due to the current health crisis, but we are already considering possible awardees for 2021. So before I go on, can I just ask if everybody can hear me okay? Yeah, great, fantastic. It's always good to check. I should have done that at the beginning, but there we go. So continuing, we are not going to have our Personality of the Year this year for obvious reasons. But we are planning the one for next year, and it would be great if we could have you with us in 2021. At the Chamber, we have a board of councillors with 20 members, and the Brazilian ambassador to the United Kingdom is our honorary president. On the board, we have representatives from important Brazilians and British companies and financial institutions doing business in the UK and Brazil. And we meet about 4 times, 5 times a year to discuss how best to implement our objectives. Amongst our members, we have commercial companies, financial institutions, law firms, accounting practices, immigration firms, and others which are normally very participant and active. And I am aware that we all continue to be active here in the UK, even in the present conditions. Financial institutions who are our members, for example, have informed me that they continue to be very busy, some of them working with 75% of their staff from home, and planning, as I hear from other firms in the city as well, it seems that the vast majority is planning to go back to their offices, the situation permitting, of course, only in January next year. But it's business as usual. If not as usual, it's business in the new normal, but things continue here in the UK normally. So on the theme that we are discussing today, Brexit and opportunities for Brazil, I am very pleased that this is the first theme that we discuss with Britcham, because it is a theme of such importance. And it has dominated, of course, private conversations and discussions in Parliament, has taken out politicians, has made other politicians, has created a lot of anxiety in this country since the UK decided to leave the European Union on the referendum of 23rd of June 2016 by a majority of 52% to 48%, and leave winning in England and Wales, while Scotland and Northern Ireland voted to remain. And it's been quite a journey since the 2016 vote result. We have had 2 prime ministers after David Cameron left in 2016. One, of course, being Boris Johnson, who is in office. We had rejections of the Leave Agreement negotiated by Theresa May with the European Union. We had 2 general elections, one in 2017 when Theresa May lost the Conservatives' majority, and one last year, which was the first December election in 96 years, which was won by Mr. Johnson with a big majority, meaning that he had the people's support to get Brexit done. We heard that so many times, and done it was. Done it was when, following the British Parliament's approval in January 2020, the withdrawal agreement was signed in Brussels on the 24th of January by the European leaders Charles Michel, President of the European Council, and Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, and then transported by Eurostar train to London, where it was signed by Mr. Johnson on the same day. It was then voted by the European Parliament, and on 31st of January, at 11 p.m. GMT, after 47 years of membership, the United Kingdom left the European Union. So, what's next? What's next to Brazil? We will hear undoubtedly from our distinguished guest today, but before we do, there are a few comments that I would like to make on Brexit impact for Brazilian companies. The withdrawal agreement that was signed between the UK and the European Union foresees that the European Union and the UK must negotiate a comprehensive deal on their future relations before the end of 2020. This is the so-called transition period. So we are now in the transition period, which means that come January the 1st, 2021, the UK will no longer be a part of the European single market and customs union, and will be subject to an agreement. All legal aspects of Britain's membership to the bloc will cease to apply. So negotiations in this transition period started in 2020, and they cover trading goods and a wide range of areas, including services, fishing, farming, aviation, security cooperation, data policy, education, and science. It is quite a lot. And the timetable for the parties to reach an agreement, 31st of December 2020, has always been considered short or too short. And this, of course, has become even more difficult considering the present coronavirus situation that we are in. But the fact is that despite the situation, it has not been postponed. So this is the deadline, and within which the UK and the European will try to agree the basis for their future relationship after 31st of December 2020. And this is the basis of this future relationship is what is really matters for Brazil, for Brazilian companies, I am sure we will hear later on today. So here in this presentation, of course, the purpose is not to go into too many details and to provide an analysis on the technical structure of the possible agreement between the EU and the UK. But it is important to make a comment here, and that is that both the European Union and the UK have indicated a preference for a free trade deal with no tariffs and quantitative restrictions being imposed on goods entering their territories. Having said that, the European Union has conditioned its approval to a guarantee of application of the so-called level playing field provisions. It's a nivelamento das condições de concorrência in Portuguese. And level playing field provisions, they aim at ensuring that companies engage in fair competition by establishing similar rules on the environment, on social rights, on state aid, and on competition. And Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission president, she came to London in January this year, to the London School of Economics, and she said the following: without a level playing field on environment, labor, taxation, and state aid, you cannot have the highest quality access to the world's largest single market. So this is a hurdle to be overcome in these negotiations. And because the European Union wants reassurance from the UK that it will not present, say, more advantageous conditions by, for example, deregulating in areas like workers' rights. Okay, but the UK is now pushing back on the European demands because it is wary that of signing up to this obligation and answering in the future to European Union institutions like the European Court of Justice. So, because of that, a future deal is still uncertain. And now we come to the point that we are discussing here in relation to Brazilian companies and why it is important to follow up these negotiations. It is important because whether the UK leaves the European Union without a deal, so they do not come to, the UK cannot agree a deal with the European Union by the end of this year, or whether the UK leaves remaining close to the European Union, there still could be gains to be made by the Brazilian companies. So let's take a look at the environment first. In terms of Brazilian exports to the UK in 2018, more than 1.7 thousand Brazilian companies exported approximately $3 billion to the United Kingdom. In 2019, the trade between the two countries were of $5.3 billion. Another reason, the UK is the world's most dynamic and sophisticated financial market of huge interest to companies and financial institutions all around the world. The UK is one of the world's top economies and a great import market. 50% of the food that is consumed over here is imported. So this gives you an idea of the environment that is offered in this country. At the moment, the entry of Brazilian products into the UK still is regulated by European regulations because, as mentioned, we still are in the transition period, but this will cease at the end of the year. And whatever is agreed between Brussels and London will have an impact on that. In accordance to a study from 2019, if the UK leaves without a deal, Brazilian companies may gain 1.7 billion euros per year. If the UK leaves with a deal, the gain would be in the region of 940 million. So, obviously, the message to be left here is watch that space and follow this up, because there will be opportunities for Brazilian players in the future. And one last comment that I would like to make on this matter is that for anybody that is interested in keeping updated in relation to Brexit negotiations, there is a platform that was launched by the Brazilian Embassy and to which, and Apex, and to which we have contributed in the beginning, called the Brazil Brexit Watch. Brazil Brexit Watch. And this platform was established following a consultation to Brazilian companies, in which 74% said that they believed that Brexit would impact their sales to the United Kingdom. For example, if tariffs go up or down, or if more or less requirements are imposed on the entry of products here. This platform has a newsletter with information about the Brexit negotiations, and it also covers negotiations between the UK and other countries. So I really encourage those who have an interest to follow that up. And finally, as I said in the beginning, we are at the Chamber of Commerce in London. We exist for our members, and we exist for the promotion of the relations between UK and Brazil. We have the experience of being here for almost 80 years, and we have a willingness to assist if we can. So please visit our website, see if there is any way that we can offer, that we can offer assistance to you and to your company. And if interested, please consider membership and contact us. So many thanks again for all of you for this invitation, for watching. And I look forward to hearing from you further, or maybe seeing you in London as soon as this becomes possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vera. Interesting stuff. I would like to specifically thank your team, Lena and Jacqueline, for the help and support in helping to line up today's event. As I mentioned, genesis of which was Lena taking the time out of her diary to meet with me and have a coffee in London over a year ago. Moving on to our next speaker, it's a huge pleasure to welcome Martin Whalley. Just for a very quick intro, Martin is Director of DIT in Brazil and FDI for Latin America and the Caribbean. Martin started his role as Director of Trade and Investment for Latin America and the Caribbean in July of 2019, so a year now, and he has worked for the British government for over 11 years. His last role was in Chicago, where he was the Deputy Consul General, and he is on his second posting to Brazil. Martin has a degree in biology from Bristol University, and like myself is also from the north of England. Martin, thank you very much. I will hand over to your good self.
Thanks, Adam. Morning, everyone in Brazil. Good afternoon, everybody in the UK. Great to be here. Thanks to Britcham for organising another great webinar. There's been a really good series of webinars organised by Britcham over this quarantine period, and it's been really good to be able to stay in touch with our friends and colleagues around Brazil and in the UK. So I'm Martin, thanks for the intro, Adam, and a quick talk about my role. As Adam mentioned, I head up the trade and investment operation of the British government here in Brazil, based in cold and rainy Sao Paulo today. I feel at home. It's pretty chilly, but I'm based in Sao Paulo, but cover trade and investment for the entire country. There's quite a lot to talk about, and I don't promise to not mention COVID-19. It is good to change the subject, but COVID-19 does open up actually some opportunities within that crisis and the tragedy of COVID-19. There are actually some sort of bright sparks and some opportunities for us. But firstly, let's talk about Brexit, which is something we talked about an awful lot before COVID-19 came along, and of course has continued during this crisis, continued to evolve. And thanks, Vera, for the excellent overview of the story so far. I won't need to comment on that because I think Vera covered really well what has happened so far. So what happens next with Brexit? One of the main opportunities for the UK coming out of Brexit is the opportunity to strike free trade deals with the rest of the world. I'm sorry if you can hear the building works going on close by. There's a lot of hammering, so hopefully that isn't coming through on the audio here. So free trade deals is a great opportunity for the UK, and we are currently negotiating a number of free trade deals with key partners of ours around the world. Of course, we're looking to negotiate a free trade deal with the USA, and that is the top priority of the UK's free trade arrangements. We're also continuing to negotiate with the EU on our future relationship. As Vera mentioned, that's another top priority. And we also have launched free trade agreement negotiations with Australia, New Zealand, and Japan. So all of those negotiations, 5 different negotiations, are ongoing and are, of course, taking up lots of the bandwidth in London and lots of the political airspace. At the same time, EU Mercosur is progressing perhaps more quickly than many of us predicted. So the political agreement on EU Mercosur was last year, and there's a lot of legal work which needs to go on before EU Mercosur becomes or comes into force. But that is actually moving at a decent pace, and I think on both sides there is a huge appetite to move forward with that trade deal. It will be the EU's biggest trade deal and most valuable trade deal. So there's huge appetite from that side, and also huge appetite from the Brazilian side. And this is something which the UK supported throughout the process. It is something which the UK was very much in favour of and continues to be in favour of. Of course, that deal will no longer include the UK because, as Adam said, we've already Brexited, so that will no longer apply to us. But as that deal is finalised, as it takes shape, and there will be a few more things which will happen to it before we know exactly what it looks like, we will, of course, look to achieve a similar deal, similar benefits with Mercosur and with Brazil. The Mercosur is a vital bloc for the UK. It's a really important trading partner, and it's something which we will want to achieve as well. So we won't want to be left behind by our European friends. We'll very much want to look to strike similar terms and a similar trade deal after the end of the transition period, which ends, of course, at the end of this year. So while that goes on, and while we're not in a position to immediately negotiate a free trade arrangement with Mercosur, there is an awful lot we can do, and a huge amount of the work of DIT, the Department for International Trade in Brazil, is doing that work, is working on opening up the Brazilian market to UK companies in the absence of a trade deal. The trade deal is not the only thing we can do. There's an awful lot more. And there's also a lot around symbolism. Us leaving the EU after over 40 years gives sends a very positive message to British companies of the opportunities out with Europe. There are obviously huge opportunities outside of the EU. Most of the world's growth will be outside of the EU. The quickest and fastest growing regions will be outside of the EU. So as we leave the European Union, it's an opportunity for the UK and for UK businesses to look to those fast growing areas which are outside of Europe, across Asia, in Africa, and of course here in Latin America. COVID-19 has impacted all of that, but it's impacted all of that across the world. That's not something which is specific to Europe or specific to Latin America. So of course, globally we'll have to overcome the challenges faced or brought forward by COVID-19. But the principle of UK pivoting to fast-growing areas around the world remains intact, and that's something which we very much hope to do as Brexit continues to unfold. As I mentioned, there's more than Brexit, and there's more than a free trade deal, and there's some really interesting changes going forward, both on the UK side and in Brazil. And I think we're all aware of the forward-leaning, business-friendly reforms which the Brazilian government has been hoping to achieve, and in some areas has already achieved. And there are some more areas where we're looking to work very closely with the Brazilian government and Brazilian companies as some more of those reforms come forward. One which I'd like to mention is the GPA, the Government Procurement Agreement, which is a part of the WTO, part of the World Trade Organization, with about 20 members at the moment, one of which is the EU itself, one single member for all 27 member states. The UK will join the GPA at the end of the transition period, so at the beginning of 2021. And the GPA opens up access for companies around the world to public procurement in other countries. So as a member of the GPA, as a future member in its own right of the GPA, the UK has access to government procurement across the EU and government procurement across every other member of the GPA. That's huge for companies in infrastructure. That's huge for companies in the healthcare sector. It's also huge for companies in the defense sector. And Brazil is currently not a member. But despite the challenges brought by COVID-19, recently was very clear, announced very clearly that it intends to accede to the GPA, which is a process which takes some years. But that indication that Brazil, despite all of the challenges currently faced with the public health crisis, is wanting to still make these very positive business-friendly reforms is a really excellent sign for the future of trade between the UK and Brazil and the rest of the world. And it's something we very much welcome. We're looking forward to working with Brazil as it moves towards signing up to the GPA, and the process itself is a helpful process. The result is obviously great. Once Brazil joins the GPA, that will open up opportunities on both sides for Brazilian companies and for UK companies. But the process itself is also positive and will embed lots of really helpful and positive market opening reforms here in Brazil. Another area which I'd like to mention, and again, it's Brazil's movement towards global organizations which embed business-friendly reforms, is Brazil's accession to the OECD, which has been running for a little bit longer. Now, the OECD is often referred to as sort of the rich countries club, and it's mostly Europe and North America, but increasingly it's other regions of the world as well. And Brazil's accession to the OECD will also will formalize lots of tax reform, positive tax reforms, will formalize lots of economic liberalization reforms. All are positive for the UK's opportunity to trade with Brazil and for Brazil's opportunity to trade with the UK. So that's something which we here in the British government operation in Brazil and in the embassy and in the consulates around Brazil are working really closely with the Brazilian government on both in terms of technical expertise and working with the Brazilian government to embed reforms which are necessary, and also in terms of political support. It's something which the UK government has been very vocal about and very much in favour of, is Brazil's eventual accession, and hopefully very rapid accession, to the OECD. COVID-19, of course, has been a huge blow to economies around the world, and you know, it's been particularly tough for bits of Europe, and particularly tough for Latin America. However, within that, as I mentioned, there are some really brilliant moments of cooperation between Brazil and the UK. And I think the most interesting and the most spectacular is the cooperation on vaccines. And Brazil and the UK have been working remarkably closely together to develop a vaccine for COVID-19. And the most advanced is the AstraZeneca-led vaccine, which came out of Oxford University, which is currently being tested right now in Brazil, in Rio, and also in Sao Paulo. We're hoping for some positive news on that as soon as possible. There's some results coming out over the next few weeks and months. And if that is, as we hope, as positive as we're looking for, then hopefully we can move towards activating that vaccine in Brazil and across the world as soon as possible. That vaccine was made possible by really close cooperation between the UK and Brazilian expertise. And it's a really excellent example of what we can do when we're working together. And despite it coming out of a crisis, I think it demonstrates the opportunities of our two countries working more closely together. There's more opportunities coming up in life sciences. Life sciences is an area where the UK is a world leader. It's an area where Brazil is doing huge amounts as well, and our public health systems are complementary and indeed based upon the source is based upon the NHS system. So other opportunities coming out of COVID-19 are also improvements in testing, and there's lots of testing companies working with Brazilian companies here to improve access to testing, COVID-19 testing across Brazil, which will speed the economic reopening here. And telemedicine is something which has been done increasingly in the UK and here, doing medical consultations at a distance to enforce social distancing. And that is something where the UK has expertise, and we've found opportunities during this crisis to expand that expertise into Brazil. So COVID-19, of course, is a very difficult moment for all of us, but we are finding opportunities for more commercial cooperation within that. Another huge area which I really want to mention and is really important for us as we look forward to the future of UK-Brazil trade is clean growth and what we can do together in terms of building back better. Now, building back better is the phrase which probably many of you have heard, is a phrase which the British government is committing to, and it's about taking the fact that we've been hit by a very difficult crisis, looking at it and making sure that as we build our economies back, we do that in a better way, in a way which is more sustainable, more equal, and sort of enforces and embeds open trade and free trade across the world. So building back better for us is a huge focus here from the British Embassy and the British Consulate on clean growth and sustainable growth, particularly as we head towards COP26, which will happen next year in the UK. The COP26 is the global negotiation on how we tackle climate change, and Brazil is a massively important partner in making sure that agreement is ambitious and achieves emission reduction targets across the world. So we are working really closely with Brazil, and we're looking for opportunities to get an ambitious agreement. And out of that ambitious agreement, we expect there to be lots of commercial opportunities for British companies in Brazil and Brazilian companies in the UK. And they cover all sectors. Of course, the energy sector is really important, and lots of British energy firms are doing great things here in Brazil on biofuels, on solar, in the future on offshore wind. And currently we're working with the Brazilian government very closely to enable the development of offshore wind in Brazil. Currently not possible, but we're hoping in the future very much possible. The UK as a world leader on offshore wind has the world's biggest installed capacity in offshore wind. So that's something where we can work very closely together to deliver clean, sustainable growth and to build that better together. But it's not just energy, it's all sorts of sectors. It's in mining, where we're looking to the power shift agenda to do mining in a cleaner way. It's in automotive, where we're looking to electric vehicles to deliver cleaner mobility. And it's across all other sectors as well. As I say, it's in life sciences in terms of telemedicine, it's in education in terms of edutech. So lots of opportunities for us to grow together in a clean and sustainable way. I'd also like to mention our work on the Prosperity Fund, which is where the UK government works very closely with the Brazilian government and the Brazilian private sector. And the idea underpinning the Prosperity Fund is that the UK government and Brazilian government and the private sector share expertise to generate future growth. And that's a lot of money being invested into Brazil over the next few years, £80 million being invested into Brazil by the Prosperity Fund. And that will deliver changes in the Brazilian economy, which will sort of see changes, which will be a small change, which hopefully can be adopted and can grow into a huge change. So although £80 million is a significant amount of money, we expect that to be to grow exponentially in terms of the opportunities that will open up for British companies over here, and also for Brazilian companies to get closer to the UK. So there's a lot going on right now. Brexit, COVID-19, GPA, accession for Brazil to the Oecd. Obviously, there are political challenges and political disruption across the world as well. But throughout all of this, I think there's a lot of opportunity, and there's crises themselves also bring opportunity. So we're looking to build back better from COVID-19. It's really important for us. Brazil is a really key partner for us as we do that. And we're looking also to the opportunities coming out of Brexit. There's a lot, there's a bit of a journey still to go on Brexit. EU and Mercosur, there's a journey there to go as well. But as we move towards a free trade agreement between the UK and this region, that will open up even more opportunities for UK companies here. And of course, opportunities for Brazilian companies in the UK. Please do count on us in the British Embassy and the British Consulate across Brazil to help with that. We're committed to making those growth opportunities happen, working both with our friends in the Chamber, British companies across the UK and across Brazil, and Brazilian companies across the country as well. I will wrap up there because I think I'm coming towards the end of my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. Excellent stuff. I think the point about the symbolism, broader narrative of Brexit, global Britain, is extremely valid and interesting. And now, last but certainly not least, I would like to hand over to Gareth Moore for the key chat today. Gareth is the head of international corridors at Santander UK, managing a team of experts that help promote and execute global bilateral trade across a number of markets. Prior to joining Santander, Gareth spent 10 years living in Brazil and worked as the British Consul in Recife, with a primary focus on helping UK businesses trade with the north and northeastern region of Brazil. Thank you very much, Gareth. I will hand over to you now.
Thanks, Adam, and my thanks obviously to the Chamber for this very kind invite to be joining you all here today. So good afternoon to those of us in the UK, and I think it's still just about morning in Brazil. It's a real pleasure to be here talking to you today, and obviously leading on from what Vera and Martin have both said. this is it's great to be here on this inaugural kind of joint event that the two chambers are running. Following on from some of the points that they made, I think you'll see there's a number of key themes that will come out in what I'm going to sort of talk about today. Just so everyone's aware, there's no building work going on here, but I do have two young children downstairs who are home alone with me. So if you hear some screams, I'll try and ignore them. Hopefully it'll be nothing too serious. But this is the new normal that we work in, as we've been saying. And if you don't mind, I have a few, just a couple of slides which I'm going to place up on the screen as well to share, which will just sort of prompt some of the conversation here as we go along. Let me just see if I can do that. Okay, perfect. So hopefully everyone can see that on the screen. And we'll kick off. So thanks for the introduction, Adam. Yeah, for those of you who know me already, Brazil's been a big part of my life for the last 20 years or so. And I've spent 10 years living and working in Brazil. Not only as British Consul in Recife, whereas Adam rightly said, you know, my focus was looking at facilitating trade between the UK and Brazil. But also I've run a private sector business in Brazil as well. So I know and understand some of the challenges and the rewards around that as well, and some of the complexities around not only the UK market, but also the Brazilian market. I moved back to the UK in 2015, and I decided to join Santander, working in our corporate bank, and took a role focused on supporting international SME trade between Brazil and the UK. And since doing that role's evolved, and I now manage a team which look after that same subject, but on a global level. When I was approached about this webinar and given the subject matter, I had a long think about how the best way to approach this subject, because it's by no means simple. As you've heard from Vera and from Martin, you know, there are a lot of complexities here and still a lot of unknowns. So what I sort of plan to do here is I want to talk a little about what we see as a bank from a UK perspective, from the companies that we speak to every day. And not necessarily just about that Brazil relationship, but trends that we're seeing with other countries that relate to what's happening in the UK at the moment, that could be applicable also for businesses looking to trade with Brazil, or Brazilian businesses looking to trade with the UK. So I'm not going to pretend for any minute here to have all the answers to this, and I may end up posing lots more questions, but hopefully it will be an interesting run through of how the world sort of looks from our side, from the opinion of a financial institution in the UK. Other thing I'd say is at this point, you know, anything that I say going forward, these are my personal opinions and not necessarily those of the bank. You know, but I will try and stick to the official line as well. But just worth pointing that out. I want to give you, you know, an honest kind of opinion of how I feel the market looks at the moment and what I see as the opportunities. So, just to give you a slight bit of context before we move on. For those of you that aren't aware about Santander, I would imagine that most people on this call should be, but we are one of the largest banks in Brazil and also in the UK, and in fact across the whole of Latin America. We have a footprint in all of the major economies in Latin America, you know, and Santander started out over 150 years ago facilitating trade between Europe and Latin America. So it's an area that we work with a lot. I think that's clear from our footprint there, and you know, 90,000 people on the ground, of which half of those are actually based in Brazil. Obviously, for those of you that don't know as well, in the UK, we have a corporate bank as well. We're probably better known in the UK for our high street presence, for our, you know, our mortgages, our 123 accounts and adverts with Ant and Dec, which if any of you have seen them will know that that's what you see on the television. But we also have a large corporate focus in the UK, and we look to support UK SMEs to trade internationally. So outside of Latin America, we are a very global bank. Many people don't realize, but we have a presence in the US as well. And obviously our European presence, Spain, Portugal, Poland, and Germany too. But what we've actually done is gone beyond that and looked at where do British companies trade? And we recognize that we're never going to have a bank that can facilitate that trade in every country in the world. So we've built an alliance with a number of like-minded banks who have the same philosophy towards supporting SMEs. So these are banks that have a deep presence in the market where they operate, and they have access to a number of SME clients across those markets. And you'll see in a bit why that's important. So, I mean, this slide, you don't need to go into the nitty-gritty on it, but essentially we can cover 85% of UK trade flows through this network that we've built. So my team in the UK are not traditional bankers. We don't sell banking products. We as a team are there to help UK companies primarily to grow their international business. We're there to try and remove the friction from international trade and simplify that journey of trading internationally, which is not easy. It's not easy in Brazil, it's not easy in China, it's not easy in any market. So we look at how we can help companies simplify that journey and work alongside a number of partners. So we build a network and an ecosystem of partners, and we can now do this in over 30 countries around the world. So we're providing companies not with banking products like you might expect from a bank, but we do that as well, obviously, but what my team specializes in is giving them insight, information, and presenting them with real life opportunities that they can then pick up and run with. So what we try and do is present them with an end-to-end opportunity, which says your product would work well in this market and I can introduce you to this company. These are the challenges that you'll face along the way, but this is how we'll fix them. These are the solutions that we have in place that we can give you and work with you on to help you through that journey and eventually obviously close that deal. So that's kind of how we're set up. And the reason we exist, where this all starts from, is really getting an understanding of what drives international trade, what drives a business to trade more with another country. So we can talk about opportunities in particular sectors, and you know, we can talk about some of the complexities, but when you actually look at the challenges that businesses highlight, it's interesting that they're perhaps not exactly what you would expect. So we have something called the Santander, the Trade Barometer, which is essentially, it's a survey of over 1,000 UK SMEs. These are businesses that are either already trading internationally or they have an ambition and are able to trade internationally. They're large enough, they have the scale, they're ready to trade internationally. And we interview these guys on a regular basis to try and understand, to get a temperature check on what they're feeling and what they're seeing in the market, and also to question them around where they're trading and where they want to trade. So very much in line with what we've heard, you know, we hear that businesses, the primary markets where they're looking to trade in the future are around the US and the Asia Pac region. But interestingly, around 32% of the businesses that we interview are either already trading in Latin America or have ambitions to trade in Latin America in the next couple of years. So we do see good appetite for the region. And what we need to work on is those challenges, which are the non-banking challenges. So if you come back to what's on the screen, interestingly, access to finance, which you'll all agree is would be my core product as a bank, is actually right down there in the list of priorities. And the things which people actually say hinder them from trading overseas is actually more around the bureaucracy, finding partners, what the economic conditions are like, language, finding the right skills, those kind of banking things. So what we've done is we've sort of classified all of these challenges. There's a lot of data that comes out from the barometer, and we classify these challenges into 5 kind of major groups, if you like, major pillars. So looking at those, these are the 5 pillars that British companies tell us are their biggest challenge to accessing those overseas markets. So trusted connections and insight. This is all about connecting with the right people. Do I know who I'm doing business with? Getting into the right networks, understanding the opportunity that's actually there for them. Is the product right for the market? What's the competitor landscape like? The bureaucracy piece is around, tariffs, taxation, the law, Vera and we'll know inside out, some of the challenges around trading in Brazil and other overseas markets. So that's where we as a bank wouldn't necessarily help, but we have partners that can. Logistics, how do you get your goods from A to B? What do the customs procedures and paperwork look like? And we'll come on to that in a minute around Brexit, because that is going to be one of the big challenges, I think, whichever way the negotiations go towards the end of the year. And then setting up, in some sectors, Vera mentioned the energy sector as a sector that obviously she works with a lot. That's a sector that in Brazil, typically a British company going out to Brazil to work in that sector would very soon have to have some kind of physical presence, in normal circumstances. So, how do you help a company go through that? And this is accountants, law firms, legal firms, but also access to skills. How do you get the right trained people that can come in and work in your business? How can you have comfort if you're sitting in your head office in London that your subsidiary in another market is working properly? And also, how do you market that? If you're selling a product or service, how do you actually go out and sell that? What's your marketing strategy? Are there local marketing agencies, etc., that you need? And then finally, the banking piece, which is, it's banking products. It's around how you manage your flows in and out. How do you make sure that you get paid? And this model that we've developed, essentially businesses are looking to do 2 or 3 things. They're looking to save money, they're looking to save time, and they're looking to grow. So what we said was, well, actually, rather than focusing on the core product of the bank, those banking products, we're going to focus on how we solve these problems for businesses, because these are the problems that businesses tell us are the real challenges to connecting, to doing more business overseas. And what we did was we developed a proposition, an international proposition, to try and help with all of these different areas. So in terms of the overseas partners, as I said, we've linked up, we've created the Trade Club Alliance, which is a link of 14 global banks where we can then connect into them. And crucially here, we can connect, the objective is to connect 1 million SMEs globally. So connecting my customer with the customer of another bank. And this removes the uncertainty around global trade, because you're being connected with a known participant, a known customer of another bank. These are verified and trusted connections. They're all members of the same club. Yeah. Market insight coming from specialists. As I say, we have a team of specialists in my team that work with global markets. We also have a team of sector specialists who can help with that. We have the Trade Markets platform, which is essentially an encyclopedia of information that can help you access new markets. We run events and seminars and so on to inform businesses of particular opportunities in particular sectors. And as we go around there, you'll see that there are ways that we cover off the logistics piece, the bureaucracy piece, the setting up piece, and the banking piece. That a lot of that's done through Santander itself or through our partner banks, and also through our international desk network, which is a multilingual network that sits across all of the Santander geographies and can help customers establish in each of those locations. So the idea here is that we recognize every single business is different. They're each going to be at different stages of maturity. They're each going to need different things. They might be new to trade completely. They might be new to a particular market. They might be an experienced exporter, or they might be establishing a presence overseas. But the important thing is that we have a solution that we can put in place to try and help those businesses and really understand the challenges that they're facing in these different markets. So when we look at UK-Brazil trade relationship, you know, what do we see at the moment, and how do we think we can grow this? And this is I guess a complex debate that's been going on for a long time. The numbers there, depending on which day of the week and the exchange rate, you know, they're broadly in line, I think, with the figures that that were mentioned earlier on. You know, this is when we look at this energy sector, the oil and gas sector. And we've supported a number of sort of events and engagements in this sector and connections with businesses in our portfolio in Brazil over the last few years. I think it would be fair to say, and Vera will, I'm sure, correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I feel that given the recent weakness in oil prices, I think towards the end of 2019, the sector was doing really well, actually, and really picking up. And I think we've seen a bit of a dip over the last few months. I think, however, if we look at the energy sector wider, I do think that you know, the shift to low carbon and the energy transition that we've talked about and that Martin mentioned really is an area where I think we're going to see the UK and Brazil partnering more. And the other area that we see where we get a lot of interest actually from British companies is around the life sciences sector, which is another one actually that Martin mentioned. You know, particularly sort of medical devices and businesses looking to get some of those technologies into new markets. And that's a sector that is particularly complex and needs quite a lot of hand-holding. And I think, you know, later this year, we're going to start doing some work in parallel on that sector to try and support some businesses into Brazil, some UK businesses into Brazil. I think I'd also mention the infrastructure sector. I think that is one that we're going to see more on, a lot more on. You know, if you look historically at what happens after a war, and I don't want to suggest that COVID amounts to a war, but in a way, the disruption it's caused in our economy is like that. You know, governments build their way out of a crisis. It's a way of generating jobs, stimulating the economy. You know, the UK government has a very ambitious infrastructure plan, as does the Brazilian government. I don't see any of that going away. We are seeing it across the globe. From our perspective, we see it in Poland with the rail sector. There's a number of new large projects going on. You know, this is a common theme that I think we're going to see globally. And I think the UK has some leading firms in that sector that I think will be very suitable for working with Brazil. Typically, you know, we see a lot of great tech firms from Brazil coming into the UK as well. I think, you know, the Brazilian technology ecosystem is fantastic. And I also think the agri sector is of interest. I think actually we've both got things that we can bring together in that sector, and that's maybe another one where we certainly we within Santander, I think maybe need to look at that one. All business that we see trading in Brazil or trading with Brazil, they tend to be at the larger end, you know, 10 to 15 million turnover or up. Typically, they'll be an experienced exporter already, and quite often they want to take on LATAM as the whole region and not necessarily just Brazil, but Brazil will be their entry point. But we've had some interesting, you know, some very interesting companies approach us, from ones that manufacture drain covers for storm drains, looking to export to Brazil, to a bathroom showroom company looking to import porcelain from Brazil, to pharmaceutical companies that work in the veterinary space. I mean, it's diverse, and we are seeing, I guess, an uptick at the moment as well in potential sort of acquisition activity. Lots of people talking about, you know, but people are playing that wait and see game a little bit, I would say. But I do think the key to further growth for me is around how we can keep removing the frictions and make it easier for us to trade with each other. And Martin hit the nail on the head with the current government, you know, in Brazil, whatever your take on the government, some of the reform program that is going through is being hugely beneficial, I would say, towards business. And if it continues, I think that will really, really help things. So moving on to the future, and you know, it's difficult because people talk about the new normal, and I don't know if we quite know what that is yet. But when it comes to trade friction, some things really are just outside of our control, and I'd say Brexit and the coronavirus are two of those things. So I'll run through briefly just some thoughts and you know, maybe pose a few questions here. You know, I would also argue, as I think Martin did, you know, can friction, can these challenges actually create new trade opportunities? And I would say yes is the answer. So if I start by looking at Brexit, you know, there's a lot of unknowns, but if you look at the facts, we have less than 6 months to negotiate a future relationship. The transition period will not extend. The EU accounts for around 50% of UK trade, and therefore the EU will remain crucial for the UK economy. Whatever we say, it will continue to be crucial, and there will continue to be a huge focus on that. The US and China are also both important, but on those two relationships, again, we have to look at what impact some of the current tensions might have on the future as well. Some things are just completely unpredictable and out of our control. If you look at the news that I'm sure everyone's seen this week around Whalley and how that may impact a future relationship with China, really far too early to tell what the reaction to that's going to be. But those types of things are just things that we can't control, yeah? But how are the Brexit negotiations going? So I think from my perspective, I see them coming back into the news every day now as time ticks on. It seems to me that I think coronavirus was top of the news every day, quite rightly, for a long period of time. And people have suddenly cottoned on to the fact that actually we've got less than 6 months to get this done. And there does seem to be a sense of urgency coming back and pace. And I think there's also been an improvement in tone in the negotiations, but there's still a long way to go before we get somewhere. I guess the question for me is, you know, what impact will the coronavirus have on the negotiations? And which way will it go? And we heard from Vera that if it goes, you know, no deal, potentially that could be more beneficial for Brazilian businesses looking to trade with the UK versus a deal. And I guess the question here is the government will need to take a view on the economy is already very, very damaged. You know, we saw the GDP figures were down 20%, I think, last month. So can our economy take another hit from Brexit, or even a potential second wave of coronavirus? Is that something that that the government is willing to risk, or do we think the government will take a softer position? And you know, I'd love to be inside the heads of the negotiators at the moment to understand exactly where that's going and you know, have a crystal ball and figure it all out. But the challenge here is the narrative around global Britain and the ambition for us to be a free trader and go out there and trade with everyone versus the impact that may have on some of these new seats which were won by the government at the last election. And if you look at the evidence, it shows that those will probably be the areas that will be hardest hit if there was a no-deal Brexit. And this is a business-friendly government. So that there's a trade-off here. Do you minimise friction and you maintain access and alignment to the EU, or do you, to coin a phrase, take back control of all the regulation, but at the expense perhaps of some of those businesses, and there'll be a cost in that, at least in the short run. You know, in the medium term, longer term, potentially not. So I think there is a big debate here at how much the government will, which way the government will go, and how much they will consider the electorate will stomach, will take on with this. I think the one thing that is clear though is the momentum now is unstoppable. I mean, it's going to keep moving, and as a country, we just need, business wants more clarity. That's what we're seeing consistently, you know, as a message. I mean, from a personal perspective, my view is that some form of deal will be reached by the end of the year. And I think there will be some kind of general alignment with the EU and a number of the EU standards. And Martin touched on free trade agreements already, so I'm not going to say a huge amount around those. I don't see them as being the be-all and end-all either. I think they're very helpful and can be useful, but they're not essential. I think if we look at a free trade deal with Brazil, as Martin pointed out, there is a lot of alignment between the negotiations that were already taking place, Mercosur, EU. The question is, will other markets have the capacity to be focusing on trade deals, given the fact that coronavirus has hit a number of economies very, very hard? Will the focus of those governments be 100% on rebuild as opposed to growing overseas? So will they have the bandwidth? And either way, these non-EU deals will only happen after we know the full state of our EU relationship. The one thing that we do know is there's going to be more bureaucracy. If you go back to our model that we look at the 5 pillars, the bureaucracy column, there was an article in the FT this week that says they estimate an additional 430 million custom forms per year, and a potential cost of around £7 billion to UK business per year, and a need for 50,000 customs agents. I mean, this is just scratching the surface. In terms of some of the impacts for business, well, if I give it an example, we're working with our partners in South Africa, Standard Bank, and looking at their agribusiness, and a number of their avocado producers sell avocados to the UK, but they're actually shipped to the Netherlands, and they're ripened in the Netherlands and then shipped on to UK supermarkets. Now, I'm sure there are hundreds of scenarios like this that could actually impact on Brazilian exports coming to the UK as well, where they go via a third country. And the question here is, well, what's going to happen if there's a tariff or some kind of regulatory divergence between the UK and that third country? So again, this is an area where we're trying to support businesses with giving them options and identifying new direct routes to market so they can still supply the UK market. What we talked briefly about agri, 73% of UK agri produce comes from the EU, and less than 2% of it comes from Brazil and Argentina. So there is a huge potential opportunity here, but again, it will depend on how we leave and what our future regulation around food standards and the environment and so on look like for us to be able to quantify what that opportunity may give us in the future. And in terms of the coronavirus, what are we seeing there? Well, I mentioned, a lot of companies have been in survival mode for the past few months. We as a bank have been supporting loads of businesses with C-bills and bounce back support and so on. What's great is that businesses I'm talking to now are really starting to look at growth again. Some sectors have been hit worse in the UK than others. High street retail is in a challenging place, aerospace, automotive, leisure and hospitality. But if you look at e-commerce, 35% of all UK retail is now online, so there are areas where we're seeing positive moves, and we're getting those positive conversations coming through. And again, in my personal opinion, I think the government has put a very good agenda in place to try and get the UK back on track. And the build that you saw in front of Boris the other day, clean growth, clean infrastructure. This is an area I really think where the UK and Brazil can win and cooperate together. Very briefly, because I'm conscious of time and I don't want to run over. In terms of manufacturing, we've seen 84% of UK manufacturers have either looked at their supply chains or plan to make changes to their supply chains. As a result of COVID-19, we've realized we as businesses, not just the UK, we're all very, very reliant on China. And businesses are now looking at, well, actually, where else can I get my supply chain from? Which other countries can I look to? And making sure that it isn't a case of all roads leading back to China. So we've been doing some work around textile manufacture and looking at people who currently purchase from China and looking at whether Vietnam, Cambodia, India might be alternatives, to move away that dependence on a single source. But my question here would be, well, why not Brazil as a player in some of these global supply chains? So I think there are sectors we can be looking at and ways we can be looking at as companies look to diversify those supply chains. And I think the final point here is around digital acceleration. This crisis right now has taught us one thing. I think in 3 months, we have made 10 years progress digitally. The number of businesses that have moved online, 50% of all UK businesses are working from home. In the case of the bank that I work for, we're all working from home where possible. Companies are having that discussion around future arrangements. Do we need office space? The way we work is changing fast. And that's where Martin mentioned telemedicine around life sciences. I think this is a fantastic opportunity. Again, that we're seeing that going into a number of countries at the moment where you may not even expect it, where that technology isn't in place. And I think Brazil is a great market where that can go. So I think lots of really positive things that can come out of this horrendous and horrible time that we're living through. But those companies that innovate, the companies that are digital, the ones that embrace the new technology, those are the ones that will come out as winners here. So I think a few sort of closing points. Think about your current business model and how it can be digital, at least in part. If it can't be fully digital, at least in part. I think we have to recognize that international trade is going to look different for a long time, and travel will be disrupted for a long time. So it's much more difficult to build those trusted networks and those connections when you can't do it in person. So I would say, make use of those digital, make use of events like this, get connected to the right people and the right networks. And also, Brexit and coronavirus, they're not the first time that global trade has been interrupted, and they won't be the last. So, this really is going to favour those businesses that are agile and can move quickly and look for those opportunities, which hopefully I've outlined a few here, which I think could be useful. And finally, my final point would be just leverage the network and the advice that's out there and available. There are lots of organisations. You might find advice in the strangest of places. I mean, a few years ago, before I started working for Santander, I thought, well, what's a bank going to teach me about international trade? They just sell banking products, right? Wrong. There are lots of organisations out there that can help. The chambers, DIT, law firms. There's a huge ecosystem of support out there, and much of it doesn't cost the earth to engage with. So use that support, get the advice, and help grow your business, diversify your business, and get out into some of those new markets like Brazil. My contact details are here on the screen. If anyone wants to reach out afterwards, I'll be more than happy. I'm conscious there probably isn't time for a huge amount of questions. So drop me an email or give me a call. And also I would be more than happy to connect anyone to our team in Brazil as well. So reach out to me if you're looking for some support, and we'll see if we can help. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gareth. Extremely interesting stuff. Now very mindful of the time, I would just like to hand over to Renata Sucupira, the excellent Britcham President of the Committee of International Trade and Investment, who I had a very interesting chat with yesterday as well, to close out today's webinar before the last closeouts, and reply to any questions. I believe that most or a lot of them were answered throughout the webinar, which is great. I would actually like to ask Gareth if he misses the sunshine in Recife, but I think we can leave that to a future
It's
occasion.
sunny in Reading today, Adam. It's sunny in Reading, so
it's good.
You can
Good
see
to
it
know.
coming through the window, no?
It's excellent, excellent. So without much further ado, I will hand over to Renata. Renata is a custom and tax advisor with significant experience in working with companies to minimize risks and costs of importing products into Brazil for final considerations. Before I do that, just like to thank everyone once again, everyone watching, all the speakers, for their very high level insight, and everyone watching in the planning and involved in the organization. Watch the space. There's more to come for UK-Brazil opportunities going forward. Thank you, Renata.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity. I would like to to say to Gareth that I was born in Recife, so I know how wonderful that city is, and I miss it very much. I would like to congratulate all the excellent speakers and thank you everybody for joining us. The questions has already been answered by the speakers on our Q&A, so I would only make some considerations. It is certain that the pandemic is already brutally affecting international trade, but that doesn't change the fact that Brazil and UK have important economic complementarities, and also that trade will be essential to the recovery of the world economy in the coming years. For an eventual trade agreement with UK and Brazil, Brazil had two basic elements to consider in addition to the interest on the negotiations. The first is Mercosur. For Brazil, it will be better to proceed in a bloc comprehensive agreement that includes but is not limited to tariff issues. But if there's no appetite from the neighbors, there is room to at least intensify the economic commercial dialogue between Brazil and the UK, particularly on regulatory issues. There are important issues for bilateral trade that are not related only to tariffs, such as enabling establishment for meat exports, vegetable health requirements, and regulatory issues. So I think that is also important to consider and to think about all that, thinking about trade facilities and market access also. So it's only, I would like only to make this consideration to take your attention to that and to thank everybody because the the questions has already been answered. So I would thank everybody and for this excellent webinar that we had here, and to say also that this presentation will be available and in our website so everybody can see it. If there are people who weren't able to see it now can see it after. So thank you very much. I will give the floor to Adam again. Back to Adam. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks again to everyone. I will just hand over to Ana or Gustavo just to close out today's webinar. Thanks again to everyone involved and have a great rest of the day.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, for those great presentations. I think we had a very productive discussions here. And I'd like to invite those viewers that are not members of Britcham to join us and be a part of this organization. I hope to see you in the next event. Bye-bye, obrigado.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Guy. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye, everyone. Sorry, I was getting stuck here with my microphone and video. So thank you very much for everyone. That has been a great discussion. Lots of good information. And thank you very much for everyone who has joined the session. And then, of course, for our speakers, Adam, Gustavo, thank you for organizing this as well. And I hope to see you all sometime soon. And Vera, I will be visiting you in London at some point. As soon as the situation resolves, I will be visiting you there. It will be an honor to have a conversation with you in person. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day and see you again soon. Bye-bye. Thank you.